Commander Kalen Vance stood before the main viewport, his knuckles white on the railing. Outside, the void shimmered with an unnatural light, the Odyssey adrift in a sea of silent stars. But the silence was the problem. For 3 cycles, the ship had been under siege, not by weapons, but by something far worse. The swarm. A collective consciousness that didn't kill, it absorbed. It devoured memories, emotions, even the spark of individuality, leaving behind hollow shells that marched in perfect, terrifying unison. The ship's AI, LY had cataloged their approach, a wave of crystalline shards, each no larger than a human hand, yet capable of unraveling the very fabric of a mind. They'd lost 17 crew already. 17 minds erased, their bodies mere puppets serving the swarm's silent will. Vance's own wife, Alara, had been among them. He'd watched her eyes go flat, her hand reach out to him with a smile that didn't reach her lips. The pain was a physical thing, a weight in his chest that refused to fade. But beneath it burned something else. Rage. Not at the swarm, but at the idea that anything could extinguish the fire of a human soul. He turned from the viewport, his gaze falling on the ship's cultural archive, a library of music, art, stories from 1,000 dead worlds. LY-Ray's voice echoed in the comms, cold and analytical. Commander, the swarm's harmonic resonance is increasing. They're preparing for another breach. Vance's lips curled into a grim smile. Then let's give them something they've never heard before. The swarm's first breach had come through the hydroponics bay, a cascade of crystalline shards that had dissolved the plants and the 2 technicians tending them before anyone could react. Now, the bay was sealed, quarantined, but the shards still pulsed within, humming with a low, oppressive frequency that made the air vibrate. Dr. Eris Thorne, the ship's xenobotanist, knelt before the quarantine glass, his face illuminated by the eerie blue glow of the shards. They were beautiful in a way that turned the stomach, faceted like diamonds, yet organic, like frozen tears. Their resonance is a weapon, Eris murmured, tracing the glass with a trembling finger. It's not just physical. It's psychic. It finds the frequency of a living mind and shatters it. Vance stood beside him, his expression grim. So we fight fire with fire? Or in this case, noise with noise? Eris looked up, his eyes wide with understanding. You want to introduce chaos? Exactly, Vance said. The swarm thrives on order. On unity. What if we give them the opposite? The idea was insane. The ship's sonic dampeners were designed to protect the crew from harmful frequencies, not weaponize them. But LY had already run the simulations. A harmonic blast, calibrated to shatter the swarm's resonance, could theoretically scatter the shards into inert dust. The risk? If the frequency was even slightly off, it could liquefy the ship's hull. Or worse, amplify the swarm's signal, turning the Odyssey into a beacon for the entire hive. Vance didn't hesitate. Do it. The bridge was a cacophony of alarms as LY initiated the harmonic sequence. Outside the viewport, the swarm's shards swelled, their glow intensifying, a storm of silent screams. Vance strapped himself into the command chair, his hands gripping the controls. Firing in 3, 2, 1, the ship shuddered. A sound, not heard but felt, ripped through the Odyssey. It was a discordant symphony of screeching violins, shattering glass, and the roar of a dying star. A cacophony of human creation, deliberately distorted, weaponized. The shards outside reacted violently. They writhed, their crystalline forms cracking, their harmonic resonance warping into a tortured shriek. For a moment, it worked. The swarm's advance stalled, the shards recoiling from the sonic blast. But then, something unexpected happened. The shards didn't just shatter. They reformed. Faster. Stronger. Their glow turned from blue to a venomous red, and the hum they emitted was no longer just a weapon. It was a song. A mocking, triumphant song that echoed through the ship's corridors. LY status. Vance barked, his voice tight. The swarm has adapted. They're not just resisting the frequency, they're absorbing it. On the main screen, the shards began to shift, arranging themselves into patterns, fractals, spirals, impossible geometries. They were mimicking the chaos, turning it into something new, something worse. The swarm's new song was a masterpiece of horror. It was a perfect, twisted reflection of human creativity. Every dissonant note, every shattered melody, repurposed into a weapon that targeted the soul. Crew members dropped like flies, clutching their heads as the swarm's resonance tore through their minds. Vance moved through the corridors, his pulse rifle slung over his shoulder, his heart a cold stone in his chest. The ship was dying, not just physically, but spiritually. The swarm was erasing them, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the echo of their despair. Then he heard it, a faint melody drifting from the cultural archive. Alara's voice. She'd been a pianist, and before the swarm had taken her, she'd been composing a symphony, a chaotic, beautiful mess of notes that defied all logic. Elwire, patch me into the external comms, Vance ordered, his voice steady. Maximum amplitude, the AI hesitated. Asterisk commander, that will override the dampeners. The hull integrity, asterisk do it. Vance stepped into the archive, the piano before him. The swarm's song was a poison, but Alara's symphony was an antidote. It was imperfect, irrational, gloriously human. He sat, his fingers trembling over the keys, and began to play. At first, it was just a single note, a discordant chirp that clashed with the swarm's song. Then another, and another. Slowly, the melody grew, weaving through the ship's systems, bleeding into the void outside. The swarm's shards faltered. Their perfect song fractured, replaced by the raw, unfiltered beauty of human imperfection. On the main screen, the shards began to dissolve, not into dust, but into light, 1,000 tiny stars, burning bright against the darkness. The swarm was retreating, not defeated, but bewildered. It had encountered something it couldn't comprehend, the beauty of a mistake. Vance kept playing, the symphony of a broken heart becoming the salvation of 1,000 souls. The Odyssey was still adrift, still broken, but for the first time in cycles, it was no longer silent.